if it wasn't for God, I probably never would have got out of that toxic relationship. And it's kind of crazy because here I was with somebody toxic, and he led me to somebody who led me to God, and it saved me. So even in the storms of life, God is there, and his light was there, and he was there the whole time. I just ignored him, and he had to really reveal himself to me before I was like, all right, I'm diving in. We're going all in.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Weapon X Holsters, quality handmade Kydex holsters made right here in Southern Utah. You can stop by the store, 1397 West Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick Leg Podcast. We are in the vault today. It's kind of been a cool experience for me with the podcast. I've been able to bring on classmates, some that I was really good friends with, some I'm still best friends with, and some that I didn't know as well. And so this will be one of those that we're bringing on a classmate of mine from Pineview High School. We're going to have a cool story. I kind of pulled this off of a post that she had put on Facebook, and I loved that it was very vulnerable. And I think that other people can listen to this and be able to draw some encouragement or, just something positive out of it. So we're going to kind of unpack a lot of that. She's got a cool story. This is Kalli Stewart. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
I'm glad you're willing to do this. There's a lot of people I do talk to that are like, I don't think I could go on because it'll either make me look bad or offend someone else or whatever the situation is. And when I reached out to you, you were game from first second.
I was surprised, and I'm just shocked that someone wants to hear my story more than just Facebook. So
no, that's what this is. That's what we've built the podcast around is, I just kind of navigate other people's stories, really. I'm just the host, right? So yeah, let's kind of dive down it. I'll let you backstory just a touch.
Okay.
If there's anything in the backstory you feel is relevant to kind of what we talked about getting into, I'll let you do that, but okay. I'll kind of turn the mic to you.
All right. Well, I'm Kalli Stewart. I grew up here in St. George. I moved around a little bit. My mom got married when I was 7. We moved to Cedar, moved to Salt Lake, and then came back here. And for a short stint, I went to Pennsylvania with a boyfriend that ended up being a husband and then now an ex-husband. But other than that, I've been in St. George most of my life and went to Pineview High School. That's where we met. And I've been here ever since until about a year and a half ago. Went to Mesquite, so.
And then you've been in Mesquite since?
For about 2 years now,
cool.
Almost. So, yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit about this post, and I'll kind of let you get into it. I'll let you talk about what you want to, and then I'm sure I'm famous for rabbit holes, so we'll kind of get off track a little bit.
Fine.
So
that's fine.
You'll have to keep me back on track.
Okay.
So kind of what I remember of it, and I just kind of briefed myself on it again before we started, was you kind of started out, there was 2 pictures. Mm-hmm. You went back on some pictures, maybe how many years ago would you say?
I was 2021.
That sounds right.
When that picture was taken, and that was just, I didn't know that picture was like still circling around. We went and visited like a gravesite, my grandma's gravesite with my dad, and he wanted a picture. My dad's huge on taking pictures. And so I was just like, okay. And we took the picture, and I was like, don't ever post that picture. And sure enough, I found it years later, and I just was like, wow, I can't believe what I used to look like, in my whole mind frame in that time. It was right after my divorce. I just gotten divorced, and I was in a really bad place in my life. And so just looking back at that, I was just like, wow, I've come a long way. And it just made me, because everyone's always thinking, I've got so far to go. And then when I actually saw a picture of myself and where I was like, wow, I have come a long way.
Yeah.
And so I was proud of that, and I posted about it, and, still on the road, but,
Sure.
The journey's been really good and, hard, but good.
Well, I talk about that often. It's like, we're only 32, 33. Mm-hmm. And sorry, I just dated you. If you want to cut that, we can. Everyone knows how old I am. We went to school together. I guess I could figure it out. I look back and I think, like, man, I've always pushed so hard. I've always worked so hard. I've built a couple businesses. I've done all these things, and it just, you get stuck in that moment that it's just hard all the time. And you don't take a lot of time to step back and look at what you've done and what you've accomplished, and in the times you've had your back against the wall, and the times that some of the good times, you don't really reflect back on that. And so, and that's kind of
to forget.
Exactly. And when the way I kind of visualize it is I'm always pushing against a brick wall. And if I'm so close to that brick wall all the time, you can't see anything else but the wall. Sometimes you got to kind of stop and turn around and see how far you've drug that thing or pushed that thing. So
that's kind of what I did. Is I saw that picture and it was just like a reflection, and I was like, who is that? And that's kind of where it all started. And I just started reflecting, and I held on to that picture for, I'd say, about a month. And I just was thinking of all the places that I was. And I'm a journaler. I keep journals. I journal my life away. And so I started digging into my journals and finding out like where I was at that moment. And I was like, wow, I really have come a long way, and I just want to reflect. And there's so much negative stuff in the world, and we focus on that. I just wanted to put something positive out there, like, wherever you're at, start now. And, things can change. I was an adult before I started making changes in my life. And, I had a really, really hard upbringing, and this was just something that made me realize I'm not that person. I've grown from that, and I didn't let where I started be where I ended up. And so
there you
still
go.
A journey.
So let me kind of just bring some of that post in. So if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, it said, I think you were saying you were 21. And if this is too personal, we can not, but I guess you put it out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
You said drank every day, smoked cigarettes every day. Toxic relationship. I think you mentioned that. And I think that's what's cool is you were able to, I don't know, like the vulnerable part of me or part of it is cool to me, because I think that like nobody's that. Like nobody wants to look back and say,
no one wants to admit,
who points that out, right?
And, when you're going through it, if I was going through it still, I probably wouldn't ever want to talk about it. But overcoming something is, you can overcome something and never talk about it because you're embarrassed by it. But I feel like overcoming something is an example for someone. And so that's why I put it out there. That's why I was like, this might be a beacon of hope for somebody else. And so if I can be that to somebody, because I've had those in my life and I've needed them. And so I wanted to share my story, and we can dive into that story if you want.
I would say let's do it. That's what I was going to say next is like maybe give us a couple things that you were going through back then.
Yeah.
Maybe what you did to get out of it, if there is like a turning point, or and we'll kind of go from there, because there's a couple other things I want to get to, but it's down the road, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Okay. It just has a lot to do with my upbringing. My mom raised me me and my brother and my sister as a single mom. My dad was in the picture, but my dad was a user, and he has stopped using, but he still had the lifestyle, still hung with those friends. And so my mom, like, she was, I don't know how she did it. She was a superwoman. She worked 2 jobs with 3 kids. And when I was about 7 years old, she married a guy, and that's what took us to Cedar City for 4 years. And it was hell. He was abusive, physically, mentally, verbally, everything. He did some horrible things to my mom, and her and his bedroom were right off the kitchen, so we could always hear them fighting in their room. He had put her head in a toilet once and tried to drown her, like just things like that, and this is somebody that my mom tried to make it look like this is going to be the best thing ever, because my mom was very lost. She lost her parents at a young age too. By the time she was a teenager, she was on her own because she didn't have her parents. And my mom, she dove into like the LDS church, and that's where she met my stepdad. And so she knew this was going to be something that would be really good for us, or at least she thought it was. And so we moved to Cedar City with this guy, and it was the exact opposite. He was very much a two-faced, I present myself. He was on the priesthood. He was very into church. I have my temple recommend. I'm this amazing person. And he wasn't like that behind closed doors. And he took out a lot of aggression on us, a lot of anger. My mom worked nights, so we'd be home alone with him at the nighttime, and he took advantage of that, and he, threw us downstairs and threw toys at us, and he wasn't a good guy. And so
you were 7, and you had
7, we were
2 siblings.
Mm-hmm,
and
2
where do you
siblings.
guys fall? So
so I'm the
older.
youngest.
Okay.
And so my sister has, she's not diagnosed, but she has been to a doctor. She's bipolar. She's all over the place. My brother, ADD, ADHD. And so me, I grew up kind of feeling I have to be an adult and I'm a kid. I have to watch there are times where my sister would watch us and she would do weird things. My brother would have to take his Adderall or whatever it was, Ritalin, and she hated being responsible for us. And so she poured Windex into his water one day, and I saw that and I had to tell my mom about it. And I just remember being really young and having to grow up quick, just my environment, abusive home, my mom, no one was there for me. My older siblings couldn't watch me. I had to watch myself. I had to take care of myself. And so that's where kind of, I feel like a lot of my strength comes from, but also a lot of my wanting to dive into something to get out of my own head to, what do you call it? Submerge yourself into a different life or a different thought pattern. And so anyways, after about 2.5 years, my mom divorced him, but she just turned completely different. She was paranoid. She was never a user, but you would think she was just by the way that she was paranoid. And he was crazy. He would drive by and leave notes on her car and just be a weirdo. And so she kind of went into this psychotic, what we would think is psychotic, but I mean, she had no
coping.
It's just a coping mechanism. So she was always worried. She never let me go out much, and she was really strict on us kids. And years later, we'd moved around. We moved to Salt Lake. We moved back to St. George. My mom never remarried. She was always kind of, I think, just 2 failed marriages. She was always kind of embarrassed about that. And so when we moved to St. George, went to Pineview High School. Before I graduated, I'd met a guy and we fell in love, and we got together outside of high school. We got married. I think I was 19, maybe 20 when I got married. That relationship was pretty much just like my stepdad. It started off wonderful and amazing, and then it got abusive in all types of ways. I started drinking a lot. I started smoking cigarettes. I never smoked cigarettes, but he smoked cigarettes, so I smoked cigarettes. And, socially we smoked. And I drank a lot. I cut myself. I went through some really deep, dark places in my life, and I got in fights a lot. I stole. I was the biggest thief, it wasn't, I'm not proud of it.
Sure.
I became a horrible person. I was a spitting image of the way I grew up and the things I saw. And we moved to Salt Lake, and one of the things that made me stop being so bad was I got my car stolen. And I was like, why did I get my car? I was so mad. And then I thought about all the people I've stolen from in my life. And I'm like, okay, I deserve this. And it kind of was a realization of what you put out there, there's karma. What you put out there, you're going to attract. And so that was my first realization of I need to do better. And at this point, I was atheist. I didn't believe in God. My dad took us around to every different church you could think of. I went to Catholic churches, Christian, Lutheran, Protestant, anything you can think of. And then my mom, she's only ever known LDS, so she took us there. But then I had that horrible experience with my stepdad, and that kind of put a dagger in my heart for that.
Sure.
I didn't really care much for it, and I was just confused. And then I had friends that didn't go to church at all, and I just thought my whole life I just felt lost and kind of discarded. I'm a discarded person, a child, and so I started blaming God and hating God, and that's when I became atheist. And me and my now ex-husband, but he was my boyfriend at the time, he had just met his dad for the first time when he was 18, and he'd been looking for him his whole life. And so when he found him, they lived in Pennsylvania, and that's what took me and him to Pennsylvania together. And when we met him and his wife were just amazing. And this woman, her name was Karen, and she was just, I'll always remember her, everything about her, the way she held herself, the way she talked, the way she acted. I just was like, this woman is awesome. She's so sweet. She's so positive. She's so sensitive. And when everything around her is crazy, she's just calm. And I'm like, what is it about her? I want what she has. And so one day I asked her, I was like, how are you the way you are? You amaze me. You're just this amazing person. And she's like, honestly, honey, it's God. I believe in God. I found God. And I was just like, it threw me off because I'm like, I am so far away from like, how could God let me live this life? I didn't ask for this. I've had a really shitty life, and like, if God loved me, why wouldn't he have taken care of me? Why wouldn't he have saved me from all of that stuff? And growing up, I did pray a little bit, like it was more of like let's try to figure out what we are, never this is what we are, this is what I believe. And so I just felt like I was paraded around my whole life trying to, where do we fit in, and I never felt close to God, or that there was a closeness with God, that he's just some guy or something up in the clouds watching over us. And, maybe I'll go to heaven, maybe I'll go to hell. I don't know. Or is there a heaven and hell? And that's where all that kind of, that's where my thinking process was then. And so when I got to meet this girl, this lady, Karen, and I just started picking her brain and asking her the hard questions and she just had the right answers. And she just was so patient with me and so loving to me. And I was just like, this woman is awesome. Like, and so she's like, do you want to try to go to church with me? I was like, oh no, I've been to every church, every religion. I do not want to go. No. And she's like, okay, no pressure. Just, do what you want. If you ever want to come. And it just felt like pulling on my heart. Like, maybe I need to give this a try. This woman, she told me she's non-denominational. I don't know if you know what that means. Just that she believes in Jesus and that's it. It's like the Bible, God. We don't believe in a denomination. We don't believe in another book. We don't believe in any other rules or regulations outside of what the Bible tells us. Okay. And so I was like, well, I've never tried non-denominational. Let's give it a try. And that got me. We went there and I'm expecting, like, I don't have anything nice to wear. I have jeans and t-shirts. She's like, wear whatever, wear that. I'm going in my jeans and t-shirt. And I'm just like, I'm not used to this. This is weird. And so we go to church and we go to sit down and it's just inside of like a hotel conference room. And so we go in and we go to sit down and there's people with tattoos all over the place, people standing, clapping. I'm just like, what is this? I'm so used to like like you got to sit down, shut up, don't say anything, don't show any skin tattoos. Like that's, forbidden and looked down on. And this guy come up head to toe covered in tattoos, his wife head to toe covered in tattoos. And they just throw their cigarettes on the chair and they're just, hey, what's up? Talking and just being all nice. And this is, Kalli and her boyfriend, and they're just so welcoming. And I'd never felt that before. I've never felt welcome somewhere or wanted. And so the fact that I was wanted made me want more, and so I started going back. I mean, I just craved it and I loved the music. People were standing and raising their hands and worshiping. And I'm just like, this is nothing I've ever seen before. And that was just, I craved that after that. And so I started the seeking, seek him and you'll find him. And I found him. And, I had a hard time at first. It was really hard, but that was the beginning of my healing process, is reaching out and actually asking God to help me, because I was so lost and I was so hurt, and my whole life I'd been damaged from, my parents and their fighting physically, and my dad being, gone half the time and then finally coming back. He finally got clean and sober, but, for the first part of my life, it was chaos, and my parents fought all the time, and then she got married and they fought all the time, and, my stepdad was crazy. And so then I married the same, I was stuck in the same cycle. And so I had found God, and my husband, when he became my husband, he played it for a while, but it just wasn't, something that stuck with him, and it stuck with me, and this was my life now. And I was still living that life, though. I was still drinking a lot. I was still doing a lot of horrible things. And when I say horrible things, it was stealing. I got in a lot of fights. I don't know, just my thought process, just all of that stuff. And so, when I found God, I just started really trying to find a better way to live. And I had to leave him eventually. Things got really bad and physical. You could see people started asking questions because they could see it. And so I just finally one night I just called my dad and my brother and I just said, hey, I need to get out of here. And they knew. They've been begging me to leave him for a long time. And I just said, hey, I need to get out of here. So I just told them I can't let him know because I had tried to leave a few times and it turned physical and hard. So they showed up the next day after he left for work, and I had called into work and just told them I'm sick or whatever I told them. And they showed up and we packed up the house and I left. And the preceding time after that was, in the beginning, it was, oh, she'll be back. She always comes back. And he knew I was at my dad's, so he'd bring things to the house like, oh, you forgot this, and then after he realized I'm not coming back, that's when the stalker came out in him, and he started showing up at my work, showing up at my dad's house, leaving notes on the car, all these crazy things.
That you'd been through before, it sounded
yep.
like. Yeah.
Yep. And then I finally I ignored him long enough that he lost interest and he found himself another girl. And sad to say that I've seen him on the bookings a few times for the same stuff that I went through, he's doing the same thing. And I'm just like, I'm so glad I'm out of it. I do feel really bad for the girl.
Sure.
And, they have a couple kids together now, and it's sad, but I'm grateful that I finally got out of it and broke the cycle. And, now I'm with a husband that actually loves me and shows me that. And it's not a toxic situation. The years of just recreating myself have been really hard. I've had to unlearn a lot of toxic thinking and, behaviors, and just really dive into who I am and who I want to be and become. And, I'm not saying that I don't ever drink, but it's nothing like it used to be. It's not down in, a 6-pack in an hour or, a bottle a night, it's and suppressing my feelings. It's a couple drinks with a friend, or, it's come a long way.
Well, I like what you said right there, where it's the person you are and the person you want to be. Mm-hmm. And I think people get stuck in the person they are and the person they've been, and they've looked in the rear view for too long. Mm-hmm. And people need to understand that you can change that direction, mm-hmm. and you can start being positive. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, your mindset was just toxic. Yep. And to be able to, and it's a good thing there was that influence, that angel, whatever you want to, whatever word you want to put to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That kind of was able to lead you on how to pivot. Yeah. And even just welcome you to new life, really. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me was, I always thought like I would have to do it on my own. I have to get out of this situation and to be able to do it. And I was able, God met me where I was at. And that's all it's about, is God met me where I was at. And he's like, you're going to do this now. We can start now. We can begin now. You don't have to clean your life up to come to me. Come to me now. And I will help you clean your life up. Yes. No matter where you're at, you can start now. And so, I like that. It's because there's so much on your shoulders in that second. Mm-hmm. And it's, how can I ever get out of this? Yeah. This hole's so deep. How can I ever climb out of this? Yeah. And it's like, well, I just need you to do your part, and I can kind of take care of the rest. Mm-hmm. And so that was the turning point in my life, was walking with God. And I didn't know what that would entail. I didn't know, that I would be here today. If you would have told me that I'd be this Christian girl who believes in God and tries to talk about God to other people, I'd be like, no way, this atheist, borderline drug addict, getting on the verge of some heavy stuff. Thank God he pulled me off the ledge a few times of wanting to dive down that rabbit hole. My biggest thing was I had examples around me. I had lots of examples of people who have dove down that hole, and I'm just like, ooh, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be scraping people's pockets and, living in hotel rooms for the night and missing all my teeth, and just, so I saw those examples, but the call was there, and my ex had friends that, that was a really hard time. It's weird because who he was when we met in high school was not who he was a few years later. And so it was really hard. And that was another thing, is I'm like, I don't want to be divorced at 20, 21 years old. Like, how embarrassing is that? Like, people are just barely getting married, and I'm hitting my first divorce. It sucks, but I mean, it sucks more to stay with somebody like that. And you always say, oh, well, I've been with them for so long, but the more time that you're with them is the more time that you're wasting, the more time that you're taking away for
somebody else that could treat you better, or just being on your own, being happy, finding yourself. And so for me, it was hard. When I left him, I had just had like the worst miscarriage of my life. I was 4.5 months pregnant and I miscarried, and that was really hard. And I didn't have a job, nothing. And so I had just barely gotten a job, and then I left him. So it was like, I didn't have anything. I didn't have money. I mean, the car I was using was his car, and I still left it. I left it all, and I made it.
Yeah.
I'm here today, and it was the best choice I ever made. It was the hardest choice I ever made, but it was the best choice I ever made. And, if anybody out there is like listening and wants to know, like, you can make something happen. I can't believe how many people rallied around me when they knew, because I didn't want to talk about it. This was embarrassing. And at the time, I didn't want to tell people what I was going through or who I was. I was embarrassed of who I was myself. And so I was really shocked to see how many people rallied around me when they realized what was going on and were there for me and helped me, not just like financially, but someone to talk to. And then I found out people at my work that I barely knew because I just started this job. How embarrassing is that? Hey guys, so my psychotic, I'm new. I've been here a few weeks, and my psychotic ex is going to be, I'm leaving him, and he might be stopping by because he's stalking me. It was embarrassing, but it was, I don't know. It was hard, but it was worth it. And, if anybody needs to know it, you can get through it. And just to have those girls at that job that I was working just come for me and offer me, do you need somewhere to stay? Do you need to borrow my car? I have an extra car that my son, he went to college or whatever, he's not using. Do you, what do you need? And I was just so shocked. And God, when you do something and trust God, God will rally around you and help. He will put people in front of you that you never saw before, or he'll put you in front of people that never saw you before. And I mean, if it wasn't for God, I probably never would have got out of that toxic relationship. And it's kind of crazy because here I was with somebody toxic, and he led me to somebody who led me to God, and it saved me. So even in the storms of life, God is there, and his light was there, and he was there the whole time. I just ignored him, and he had to really reveal himself to me before I was like, all right, I'm diving in. We're going all in. And yeah,
well, I think
miracles happen.
That's cool too, where it's like, not only was it your faith or the direction you were going, that there were so many people there also. And I think people get so tunnel vision and
they
forget.
feel alone.
Yeah. And I think that's part of that darkness though, is there's nothing else out there. It's just me. Yeah. I'm alone. I'm carrying the weight, and I have to change. And how can I change? Yeah. There's so many things going on that are positive or negative. I don't have a car. How do I leave? I'm using his car. Right. Yeah. I mean, when you're telling the story, and obviously I'm hearing this for the first time, right? And so
a lot of people read that post from high school, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, this was your life? And, and they had no idea about my childhood, my upbringing, because you feel alone. You feel like there's nobody out there who's going through what you're going. That's why you don't talk about it. That's why it is a vulnerable thing, because you letting people know what you're going through it almost makes you feel like people are going to look at me as defective, like I'm just damaged goods now. People aren't going to view me as, the person I want to be, or who I think, or who I like at least pretend to be in front of people. They're going to view me as damaged goods, or they're going to judge me, or, there were a few times when I was in elementary school where, other kids, I'd see that it was noticeable their parents were hurting them, and kids would make fun of them for it. And that hurt me, just seeing that. That was hurting me, to see somebody else hurting and other people were making fun of it, and so I don't know. And me being a bad person, me getting in a lot of fights growing up, me, talking crap, me stealing from people, all the things that I did, I felt like people, if they knew my story, they'd be like, oh, she deserves it. She deserved that, and so I never wanted to talk about it. And that's one of the things that make you feel really alone, is you don't talk about it. So it's all it is you. You are the only one that knows your story, and you're not sharing it with anybody. And when you share that with people, when you share I shared it after 10 years of change, but if I shared it in a moment, I bet there would be so many other people that reach out and want to help me, not just because of me, but because they feel it on their heart. That's pulling on their heartstrings. And that's what's happened with me. Every time I hear about other people's stories, especially that's something that's related to what I've been through, I'm just like, I want to help you. Like, I don't know you even, and I'm reaching out to you. I see little Facebook stories and stuff that pop up, or people, people share, what are those? Oh, I'm going to forget the name of it. Money things where you can, help people out. I forget what they're called. Like GoFundMe. Yeah. When I see other people's GoFundMe, oh, my friend's house burnt down. I don't know this lady, but I'm going to help her because she's in a vulnerable state. But if I don't know she's out there, how can I help her?
Yeah.
And so if people don't know that you're struggling, how can they help you? How do they know you're drowning if your hand's not out of the water reaching? So I don't know. That's the main point of me sharing my story, is to hopefully bring other people to want to share their stories and to want to talk about the hard things. And that's why I'm here right now.
Yeah. Do you think that you experienced any of the whole, like, being judged negative?
And I'm sure posting that, but I'm at a place where I just don't care.
That's what I'm getting at.
I don't care. No, I spent majority of my life caring what people thought.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest things that God has helped me with. And I mean, that was my biggest fear, is everybody knows me as an atheist. Everybody knows me as, this trashy white trash girl, like, how are they going to feel about me being Christian? How are people going to view me? How are they going to accept me? Even my own family, my brother was far beyond that, far beyond the Christian lifestyle. And so, and I partied with him all the time, and we drank all the time, and he basically got me smoking weed and stuff, so for me to go back, come home from Pennsylvania back to St. George and be like, so I found God, he's just like, what? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
I don't like this new Kalli. And I'm like, well, yeah. And so it was embarrassing, but I've found that, now my brother, he goes to church and he believes in God, and that he's worked his way up, and he's now leading the soundboard. I don't know if you don't go to the church that I have, that's like a church like mine that I go to, it's hard to understand. Like, they have like live band going on at my church. And so he takes care of the soundboard and stuff, and they have lights and stuff. And so he's in it, and he knows people, and he loves church, and he loves God. And if I didn't put that beacon of light, he might not be there, and I'm not saying that it's all on me. It's God working through me to get to him. And same with some of my friends and other family members, that I've been so changed and saved that I'm just like, I have to share this. I have to put that out there. I have to be the light in the world, because I was the darkness. I was the one pulling people down. Like, anyone wanted to talk about God, I'm right there ready to be like, well, let me tell you about this God, like, we're all, evolution, and, like, I was so on the other realm. So it's so weird. I'm literally, like, you got your angel and your devil, and I've been both. And, I'm not perfect, obviously, but, I'm a work in progress, and it's still going forward. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just keep going forward. Take a few steps back, just keep going forward. Just don't stop. And
I think having that confidence in yourself is really what can drive you forward. And then being able to share your story, and how you ended that post was talking about God. And then I believe you said something like, ask me about him, or ask me, or something. And I thought, like, that's awesome. Like, you, that
I'm
is
not afraid anymore, and that was the biggest thing, is
because you don't care, because you're but you had to go through that stuff to know what the confidence was, though, right? Like,
I had no confidence in myself ever. So it's crazy that, my confidence does come from God, like, flat straight out. Like, it was realizing who I am in him that made me realize who I really am, my identity, like, he calls you, beautiful, smart, wanted, valued, no one called me those things growing up. I was a piece of trash growing up. At least that's how I felt, like, my parents, if they hear this podcast, they're probably like, oh, Kalli, like, but it's just, it's not something they pushed on me. It's how I personally felt. It's my situation, how I felt stuck, how I felt empty, how I felt lost, So for me to believe anything good about myself was just, it wasn't anything I could give myself, because I didn't know how to give it to people. I didn't know how to receive it from people. I didn't know how to have it for myself, so the confidence literally came from God, from reading who I am in there and hearing what he had to say about me. And I'm just like, what? Like, who are you though to tell me what I am? Like, you are the alpha, omega, everything, and you value me.
Yeah.
Like and so I've realized really quick, like all those religions that I was grown up with, like, I mean, my dad, every other weekend he's taking me to another church, and so I never knew what I was. People would ask me, what do you believe?
Yeah.
I don't know,
Nothing,
and
yeah.
I barely learned something here, and then over here it's wrong, or over here it's different, or we don't even know about this. And so for me, like, it was all about religion growing up. And I'll be honest, I barely go to church. I love the church that I do go to, but we are the church. We are the home of God in us. And it's about having a relationship with him versus going somewhere to find him. He's already here. And if you believe in him and you accept him into your life and you accept Jesus into your life, he's already in you. You already have him. You just have to keep seeking him and keep moving forward and have that relationship with him. It's just like anything. Like, if you want to have a really good relationship with your husband or wife, you have to have communication. You have to dive into that. You have to nurture that and talk and I want to know about you. How do you know about God? You read about him. You read your Bible. You talk to him. And everyone thinks it's just this, I have to go in a dark room and get on my hands and knees and say these, eloquent prayers. And it's not even about that. It's about, God, I'm having a hard day. Like right now in this very moment, you can have a conversation with him. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is realizing there is somebody for me there. And that's what gave me my confidence and helped change me. Is I always felt alone. And when I realized I'm never alone, I'm never without, I always have someone to talk to. That was the biggest thing for me, that I was like, yes, like I finally feel like I can free myself and I can talk to God about my stories. I can tell my stories, because I don't know. No, I either didn't want to tell my family because I was embarrassed, or, how am I going to tell my husband the stories of us? Like, I really got hurt when like I had no one to talk to. And I'm sure I could have if I reached out, but then I felt like I'd be judged. But with God, it's all open. It's just literally, I can say anything. And so that's where I got my confidence from. And that's where I've learned, like, I don't care, because I don't answer to you. I don't answer to anybody but God. And so at the end of the day, take me or leave me. Like, this is it. This is,
This is Kalli.
This is Kalli.
So I want to touch on something, because I've been very well known of just like how you talk about your mom and the things that she had gone through. And I've been very critical of my dad on the podcast.
Okay.
And like, I don't know how much you know, and maybe you don't know any. It's fine if you don't. So
sorry.
No, I don't. I'm just saying, I didn't want to double or repeat myself if you already know what I'm going to say. But in a nutshell, like, I had a great childhood. My dad was always around, did sports, he coached everything, all of that. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, mentally, I just kind of passed him up. And when I was in high school, or when we were in high school, he met his mentality really started going down. He was diagnosed bipolar. He was diagnosed, depression, everything, started getting on medication, and that was a roller coaster for him.
Oh, yeah.
And really, I believe what it was is he had to be strong for all those years. So I have 4 siblings.
Okay.
I have 1 little sister, 3 older brothers, and he was working multiple jobs. He was going to school. He was carrying the world on his shoulders for all of those years. Mm-hmm. And he had trauma from his childhood that he never got to deal with, because he was raising all of us. Right. And so when it got, and I mean, I have a 2-year-old now, so like, I'm kind of seeing some of this stuff, and long story short, so he ended up, we kind of moved him out. He had attempted suicide a number of times. Like, I had stopped him 3 or 4 times.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
And so this is what I'm saying. Like, I was really critical, and I've told the story about him a few times. We had Nicole Hilton on here after she attempted suicide, and she did it at the same spot my dad did commit suicide.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So back to, like, I'm trying to tie all this back without bringing up this whole story, right?
Let's talk about you.
So I'm thinking, the way I'm tying this together is like, I believe that he was doing his best, you know, and
with what he knew, and
yeah,
what he could do.
And he had a rough upbringing as well. He was the oldest of 9 kids, abusive dad.
Yeah.
I found a quote a while ago, and I believe I've brought it up on here. It basically said, like, to my kids, I'm sorry that you had to deal with the past traumas that I never dealt with, and that it might have hurt you or something like that. And it kind of hit me, and I was like, dude, that's my dad. Like, that's my dad in a nutshell. And, you know, for 16 years of my life, he was just, you know, nose to the grindstone, just working and trying to put food on the table and pay bills. And so I look back on both of my parents, my mom and dad, and I think, like, man, they were just doing their best, you know, and they had stuff going, they were living a life too. Yeah. You know,
they had their own things going on.
Yeah. And so and if I'm wrong, correct me, but like with your mom, I just think like that's rough that the kids went through that. Yeah. But man, she was probably she trying to get through the day too.
She stepped in front of us a few times to take what would have been ours. You know, she's, you know, we had a really hard, when I was a teenager, I wasn't fair to her. I ran away. We fist fought. Like, we ripped each other's hair out. I mean, like, it was bad. And some of my really, really close friends kind of know, because I ran away to their house. They're like, what are you doing? You know, why are the cops at my house? You know, like, and I'm like, I tell my mom I'm here, please. I don't want to go home. And so I had to kind of open up a little bit. And they knew that, but they always just, my excuse was, my mom's crazy. But, you know, like I said, my mom lost her parents when she was young. And so she grew up with her older brothers that were partiers, drinkers, you know, so she didn't have, in the most vulnerable time of her life, when you're a teenager, she didn't have a mom or a dad. She didn't have someone to show her how to be a parent. And so all she knows is, I was freaking wild. I experimented with everything. And this is going to be my kids if I don't, like, put the foot down. So she was like military mom. Like, she was strict. She was hard. And that's where I rebelled the hardest, because it's like, I've done nothing wrong. Why can't I go out with my friends? Like, so then it started, you know, my friends used to make fun of me. Like, okay, don't invite Kalli. She'll never be able to go. Like, Kalli can't go out. And so that's when I started, like, running away or sneaking out, or, you know, and then I was grounded for like a year. And so I'd sneak out because I'm grounded and I want to hang out. And I've been inside for 2 weeks. So
you're like, I'm a kid. I want to be a kid.
But I think as I've gotten older, and, you know, my mom, bless her heart, she never wanted to talk about her upbringing. And so my dad, even though they didn't mesh well, my mom and my dad was very good at talking about my mom in a good way. You know, even though they'd fight and bicker in front of each other and we'd see it, and, you know, we kind of felt like we had to pick sides, my dad would always say, I still love your mom. You know, she's important. You need to respect your mother. And he would tell us some stories, and, you know, your mom had a really hard life. And he's the one that told me about a little bit about my mom's upbringing. And I had asked my mom, is this true? And she's just like, yeah. And it just, as I've gotten older, it's brought in so much more respect for me to my mom, you know, like, wow, you know, like, I understand now, like, even though I hated you growing up, even though I hated going through that, and that really sucked, knowing what your mind frame was then too, and you're scared shitless because you're raising 3 kids and you have to work 2 jobs, and you know, my sister, she's got her, you know, mental issues, my brother's got his ADHD, you know, and I'm left home with these, you know, so I couldn't imagine what stress she went through, you know, and she couldn't afford a babysitter. I mean, the way we grew up was a lot different. You know, nowadays it would be like, you cannot leave her and your kids home like that. But, you know, back then, I mean, gosh, you could get away with a lot more as a parent. Nowadays, it's not as easy. But I think, like, how did my mom survive her childhood? Like, I look at my childhood, yeah, there was a lot of shitty parts. There was a lot of good parts, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of shitty parts. And I look at my mom's childhood, I'm like, was there any good parts? My mom lost her dad when she was 9. He was sick all the time. Like, he got cancer, like, and so she watched him be sick for a long time. And then after he passed away, she watched her mom struggle. All her siblings are older, so it was just her and her mom. Her mom's a lot older because she'd had kid. Like, my mom was the very last one, so she was old. She got cancer. She watched her mom die, you know, so she watched both of her parents die. Then she goes and lives with her brothers that are wild, crazy party animals at like 15, you know, and she got into a relationship with my dad really young, had babies at 17, 18 is when she started. My dad had 3 boys already, and the girls were drug addicts. And so my mom took on those 3 kids. And then after she left my dad, it was like, I can't take 6 kids and bail, and bounce and go make my own life with 6 kids. So she had to let the other 3 boys go. And that breaks her heart, because seeing where they're at today, is just, could they have had a different life? I don't have a relationship with those brothers. I know them and I have them on social media, but I don't know them, personally. And my mom beats herself up about that too. And I'm just like, and about us. And I'm just, I've got such a bigger heart for my mom now. Growing up, you don't understand it, because you're young, you don't know these things. And so seeing my mom now, I'm just like, we have the best relationship ever now. Like, we're best friends, which is, if people that I went to high school with know me as like, I made poems about how much I hated my mom. Like, it was bad. I wanted to be away from her. Living with her was brutal for me, and brutal for her too, because we were neck and neck all the time. And then, all these years later, it was when I found God. I came back home. We moved to Pennsylvania, and then we were moving back. We stopped at her place. She was living in Wyoming at the time. And we stopped at her place. And, the last time I saw her, we had a huge fight, because she's like, "You're not going to Pennsylvania. I will never let you go." I'm like, "I'm 18. I can do what I want." I just turned 18. And she's like, "You might be 18. And she got a lawyer, everything. And the lawyer was just like, "Is she 18? Yeah, there's nothing you can do." Yeah. And I love that. I was like, I'm out. Bye. And so we didn't leave. I didn't leave on the best terms. And so to come back after being out there for months and indulging in God and learning and actually believing in God, when I came back and saw my mom after months, like, she was just like, "Who are you?" And we had a really deep conversation, and we cried and we hugged and we held each other and we forgave each other in an instant for everything, that was it. That we laid it all down and we started fresh and new. And ever since then, we have little tiffs here and there, but it's nothing like it used to be. She saw me for everything that I'd gone through, and I saw her through everything she had gone through. And we laid it all down, and when you can forgive yourself, it's easier to forgive others. And so I think that's where our relationship has really blossomed, is we've learned to forgive each other. We've learned to forgive ourselves through our wrongs. And we just move forward, and we have a good relationship now.
Do you think that when you were a kid, if she would have opened up about any of it, that it would have done anything? Or do you
think so, because I say that, but you never know.
Yeah,
you always say whatever you always want, what you can't have, and then if you have it, you don't like it. So it would probably be the same with that. If I don't know, like, hearing it from my dad really bugged me though, because my dad, he'll tell me his stories, and my mom's like, "I can't tell them that will give them, a receipt to go do it, or a ticket to go do it." And my dad, I love that he was just an open book, like what I'm doing right now, just an open book, just explain, yeah, I did this and it was crazy, fun, wild story, but these were the consequences and this is what happened. And that for me is the biggest learning, is when I can see someone go through something and see what happens after. Hey, I don't even want to touch that because I've seen it. But if you don't know, you don't know. And then you want to experiment. And that was my mom, is she never wanted to share anything. But my dad, he'd tell me his crazy stories. When he was a teenager, he broke into a pharmacy with all his friends and they stole everything. And, they didn't go very far before they got caught. And then he told me, yeah, that night in the cell, I was strung out on everything. So I'm out in there. They had this toilet and a brick wall. And then there's the gate, just this little teeny brick wall. And he told me I was so strung out. I thought someone was trying to get in and kill me. So he's breaking the wall and pulling the rebar out. And they're in there. The cops are he's going to hurt himself. They had to get him out and put him in a straitjacket. But he was just so messed up on the pills and stuff. And hearing these stories about my dad, I'm like, holy crap, Dad, you're freaking crazy. But I never wanted to touch that stuff because I never wanted to be in that situation. And it didn't make me not love him or think any less of him. It made me grateful that he would tell me stories like that. But the few times, he doesn't like to tell me too much because he knows my mom is very private and doesn't want to open up about that stuff. So he's told me a few things, but usually my mom, when I ask her about him, she's mad. I don't want her. And so she's opened up a little bit about her upbringing and her family and going through things. But that's just a part of my mom's past that she just doesn't ever want to dive into. And that's maybe the reason why I had been so, enclosed with my right. story, for so long. And there's freedom in just letting it go and not caring and just, judge me if you want. You're going to forget about me in 2 days and be judging somebody else. So what difference does it make? So.
Yeah, it's the truth. Yeah. If you're already going to be judging me, then go and judge. And if not, if you connect with me, then we can connect and have stories together.
And it's opened up a lot of doors to other people to want to talk about hard things with me. Or it's really crazy because, there's talks like going back to God here. God gives you certain gifts and abilities, there's certain gifts and sometimes you have them, but you haven't tapped into them. And there's certain things like I've always been really good with my words. I don't know why, like just writing like poetry and stuff like that. And people would read my poems in middle school and high school and be like, wow, Kalli, like this is really good. Like you know how to write and stuff. And because I'm expressing my pain. I mean, that's part of my life and I'm expressing that and people can relate to that. And then when people can relate, they want to talk about it and talk about it with you. And then you can give advice because you've been through some things. And I am reached out to by so many people for advice my family, my friends. And again, this is not like, oh, look at me. I'm the rock in my family. Like when anyone has a problem, they come to me and I'm the youngest and I'm like the wildest, like I'm like the black sheep. I was the black sheep of the family for so many years. So it's so different to be kind of a glue, to help my family, to talk to them because one, they know that I'm not going to judge them. And then two is we've all been through something together, and we've all experienced it differently. We all have our own views. I mean, we could all experience the same thing and come out with different thoughts and views and feelings about it. But I mean, my brother, like I have the closest relationship with my brother and he tells me everything. My sister, my mom, my dad, and they call me, like, Kalli, I'm going through something really hard, or even my in-laws and my husband and our friends, I have a lot of friends that say, I can't talk to anybody the way I can talk to you. And I'm just like, I'm just blown back. Even now, even though I've heard it for a few years, I'm always just like, wow, thank you. Like I'm glad that you trust me with these things, and you can trust me with these things. I'm not going to go out there and tell everyone about it.
You're not going to get on a podcast from a
I'm not dropping any names. I'm not going to drop any names. I'll tell my story before I tell anyone else's. But yeah, and so these gifts that I've found that I have, I'm like, I want to, utilize them and help people. And again, that's another reason why I posted that is just like, hey, you want to talk? It doesn't have to be about God, but I mean, there's not much that you're going to get out of me that doesn't have something with God in, because that's my life now. Like, take it or leave it. If you want advice, it's going to be truth. It's going to be, I've had to, for me to change and be who I am today, I've had to go through the hard things and let things go and grow and have my shit called out, like people have to call me out. And God kind of does that. When you read the Bible, it's almost like a mirror. You're like it's reflecting everything that you're not and everything that you are or what you could be. And so as I've read it and I've had to realize how far I am away and how far I have to go, it's really helped me to grow in that area and to change and to dive in deeper. And now I want to be that person that someone can trust me with that stuff and I can help them with these things. And like I said, it doesn't have to be God, but the advice that I'm going to give you is going to be, godly advice. I don't have to say it's okay. So Jesus said, I just, well, did you lie? Well, then you probably should go tell the truth. Or did you steal that? Well, then you shouldn't probably, you deserved to get caught, I've had to learn the hard way. Like I said, I got my car stolen and I was like, why did this happen to me after I've stolen thousands of dollars worth of stuff? I've stolen from friends, family, everything, gone through people's wallets, and I don't do that anymore. What would have changed me? Yeah. Check your wallet. I got good at it. But I mean, I'm not kidding you. I would go to house parties and I would have, this is how sick it was. Like I would have a purse with me that had nothing in it, my own purse, and I'd go into people's bathrooms and just load up makeup and, if there's clothes on the floor and throw them in my bag. And I was bad. I mean, like to change that, it was almost like compulsive. I didn't even realize I was doing it sometimes. Like it was that bad. And now I won't touch anything. I won't steal anything. Like, it's like, if it's not given to me, even if it's just sitting there, I'm like, whose is this? Like I've learned my lesson, and so I've had to have those things revealed to me to know, like this is not okay. And so that's the advice I'm going to give you too. And I think that's what people like about the advice I give is because I'm not just going to be a yes man and tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And that's exactly what I've needed. Nothing's going to change if you don't have change. If someone's not going to tell you what to do to change in a positive way. So.
Well, we definitely have that in common. That's kind of where the podcast came from, was I'd have these conversations with people, and it doesn't even have to be like deep confession stuff, but just talking through things and just whether that's business or personal stuff or families or friends or whatever it is, kids, whatever, we would get done and we'd both be like so Tyson Coford, him and I, we looked at each other and he's like, dude, we should have recorded that. Like someone could have, we had that a few times.
You could change the life or something.
Yeah, and that's where this whole thing was born. And it took years to get to that point before I actually started a podcast, but that's kind of where that was planted in my head. And so when you're saying that, I'm thinking like, yeah, I've been there. I mean, I've been able to have conversations with people and at the end, I'm like, I don't know why they thought they could open up to me, you know, or vice versa. I would be like, I don't know why.
It's a person, honestly, it's like let's just be honest here. When you asked me, I had to dive in a little bit and watch some of your podcasts because I'm like, can I talk to him? I mean, I'm fine. I'm an open book, but to just trust somebody and like not just trust them. It's like if you're over here and I just like don't feel a vibe with you, like that you're interested or I'm not gonna want to tell you all my stuff. So there definitely has to be like a vibe, and I feel like like I'm trusting talking to you. I'm sure you're trusting talking to me. Like, and that's kind of what people pick up on them. I can talk to that person. I can open up to that person, and I feel safe. And I appreciate what you're doing. That's why when you invited me, I'm just like, oh, wow. Like,
well, it's funny because people are like, dude, that's cool. You're going to invite me. And I'm like, dude, we're just sitting down and talking. Yeah. So to me, it's like not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that the consistency we've had, and we've had a lot of growth. I mean, we have a lot of viewers. I think YouTube views just went over like 250,000.
Wow.
And I'm just like for me, it blows my mind that many people would even want to see what we have to say, right? Just this little St. George, Utah town, right? And that's really what we've done is just the majority of the people on the podcast are just people around here.
Yeah.
It's people
the
that
organic,
I know.
Conversations that, that people don't want to talk about, or hard conversations or even good stuff that you just want to, shine light on and share. And so.
Okay. I want to shift gears just a little bit.
Sure.
So after you move back, how long until you meet Brian?
So Brian and I actually
you would have known each other before.
Yeah. So I lived in Bloomington Hills, and I lived on this little cul-de-sac, little circle, and my house was right across the street from one of my best friend's houses, and you jump her fence, and that was Brian, my husband's house.
Okay.
And so I'm 4 years older than Brian. He's got 3 sisters, but one of his sister was just a year younger than me. So we rode the bus together. Her name was Ashley. I don't know if you ever knew an Ashley Stewart.
That sounds super familiar, I'm sure.
This is back in like Desert Hills time. 6th grade. And so me and her, that's where I first kind of got introduced. Obviously at that time, Brian would have been in like 2nd grade and I'm in 6th grade. And so I just knew him around the neighborhood. Like some of my girlfriends, he was friends with the younger brothers and stuff. And there was a few of them. So he was always around and I knew of him, but I didn't really know him. And then as I got older, they had a cousin, and it was a boy cousin. And he was one of my really good friends too. And so I started dating my now ex-husband, who was best friends with this cousin. So even though we left the neighborhood and everything, I was still around Brian and his family because the cousin was always at their house, their aunt and uncle's house. And so me and my boyfriend, now ex-husband, but we were always over there. So I'd always been around Brian and his family, and I kind of grew up with them. It's kind of funny, like even though it was years and years later, it was like we fell in love with the girl next door, but it was years later. And so, so his sister, I was friends with her first. And then as I got to be with my ex-husband now, we actually hung out with Brian's parents all the time because they always liked to watch football. And so I started watching football with them, and me and my ex-husband would always go over there, watch football and hang out with his parents, which was kind of weird, but whatever. I liked hanging out with the older people. And Brian's cousin, their parents would come over too. So I always hung out with the parents. It was weird. All the kids would leave and me and my ex now would stay and hang out with the parents and watch football and have fun with them. And so I got a really good relationship with Brian's parents. And then when me and my ex split, I kept that relationship with his parents, and they talked to me a lot because they knew my ex, and they wanted to, are you okay, honey? Like, do you need anything? And that was really nice, having older friends that are parents that, like, they were like parents but friends to me at the same time. And so
I've got a handful of those.
Yes, and so I'm like, you're like the friend that I really need, that's like a parent but a friend at the same time. And so they were there for me. And Brian's mom is amazing. She's like one of my best friends. And what's funny is, after I left my ex, me and her started going to the bar together and hanging out and shooting pool. And she's just a really fun lady. I love her to death. And her husband is amazing too. And so I hung out with them a lot. And then after a while, I started hanging out with his oldest sister. She's actually a couple years older than me, because she was at the bar. So we all started kind of hanging out. And then we all became friends. And then Brian was just always around. And then we just kind of had eyes for each other, eventually. And it grew. We were always friends. I've known him since he was in 2nd grade. I was in 6th grade. And we just ended up, hey, let's hang out. You're kind of cute. And, then we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and then now husband and wife all these years later. So it just organically grew, and it was somebody I knew forever. And he knew my ex. He's seen me through all of it. He knew the stories. He knew everything. So it was the same thing when I got divorced. I was like, who's going to want a divorcee at 20? Like, you always, these things just play in your head. Like, all the moms that are like, I don't want to be a single mom. Who's going to want a single mom? It's like, there are plenty of people out there that would be happy to have you.
Yeah.
You're just so, blinded by your own thinking that you can't see past it. And so, yeah, me and Brian ended up kind of dating, and it felt weird at first because I'm like, you're like a little brother to me, you're 4 years. I've been around your family for years and years. And so that's kind of how that happened and how we met. And yeah.
And you've been married how long now?
I think it's 7 years. We've been together for 10 and a half years.
Okay.
It's married 7. So
okay.
Yeah, it's no kids. We can't really have kids. I'm sure with that, like you kind of were talking earlier before we started, my husband went through testicular cancer. And then I've had my issues too with getting and staying pregnant. And just there was a lot of pressure on us when we first got together because, like I said, I'm 4 years older than him. I was like, 26, maybe 27 when we got married. And my sister had a really hard, she's 5 years older than me. She had a really hard pregnancy. My grandma had 5 miscarriages is what I heard. Wow. And then with my ex, I had a miscarriage when I was 17. It was like quick. It was very, like, not very developed. I was maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks along. So I wasn't very far when that one happened. And then I got pregnant again, and that was in the heat of everything. I was leaving him. Like, it was really hard for the first time I was leaving him. And it was at a time where abortion wasn't as talked about. So people did it, but it was like, I don't know how to explain it. My ex-husband, his mom had 2 abortions. His sister had an abortion. My best friend had an abortion. I knew people that had abortions. So it was like, to me, the way I viewed abortion was like, it was like a morning after pill or something. Like, I didn't know what it really was. I didn't research it. This was before Google was what it is, like, and everyone talked about it. And there's all these people, oh, it's a horrible thing. Oh, it's, woman can do, like what it is today, before all that. No one really talked about it. And so for me, I was like, I'm leaving this guy. I don't want this baby. So I had an abortion. And then, of course, I got tricked and talked and sweet romanced back to getting in a relationship with him. And then I ended up getting pregnant again. And I'm like, never going through that again. I'm never getting an abortion again. Because after I had my abortion, I felt all kinds of feelings I didn't know were attached to having an abortion. I just thought, because I had, like I said, I had miscarried once. So when I got that, I thought it was just, getting rid of it, whatever, no big deal. And I just felt like immediately after I had my abortion, I felt empty. I felt weird. I couldn't explain it. Like, I felt hollow, and I started thinking about it for days. Like, what did I just do? What did I just do? Why did I do that? What is it? Why do I feel this way? And then that's when I'm like, I've got to figure out what this was that I did. And so that's when I looked it up online, and, you have to be, I think it's like 9 to 12 weeks pregnant before you can get one. And then after 12 weeks, you can't get one. You're too far. And so I was just reading the stage that a baby is at that time, and it broke me. It freaking broke me. I was just like, oh, they can hear their mom's voice. They can, their heartbeat, they're starting to develop. Like, I'm just like, when I just like broke down, and I was like, what the hell did I just do? I'm a murderer. And that was another thing that was really hard for me to overcome. And after I realized that, I said I'd never do that again. I don't care what situation I'm in. I'm never going to go through that again. And that's my own personal choice. But so yeah, when we ended up, I was in a really vulnerable state, and I was having a really hard time. And, my ex, I broke up with him. He was trying to get back with me. And my dumbass, I was just like, I need somebody. And I didn't tell anybody about my abortion because I was so humiliated and embarrassed by it. And I knew my parents would probably be really upset with me. So he knew about it, and he was the only person I could talk to. So of course I just dove right back in with him, and we got together. We ended up getting married. Then I got it to a place where I'm like, he was getting really abusive. I want to leave him, and then I'm pregnant again. Oh, screw my life. Like, why did I do this to myself? And so I said, I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm not going to get rid of it. And I just was like, I'm going to stay with him, I guess, till I at least have the baby. I need somebody to help me, to take care of me. And so we stayed together, and about 4.5 months, I lost it. And so that wrecked me. I almost died myself losing that baby. I lost a third of my blood. It was the worst thing I'd ever gone through in my life. And I just decided, I don't know if I want to try to have kids anymore. And me and my husband now, Brian, we felt the pressure that we need to try because I'm older, and like I said, my grandma's had 5 miscarriages. My sister had a really hard time with delivering her baby and even getting pregnant. And then she got pregnant, and she had a really hard time delivering, and a lot of complications. And then me with now my stuff, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to keep trying. And, my husband's Polynesian. I'm like, they have buku kids, and that's their whole thing is ohana,
family,
like that's family. And so I just remember feeling so pressured. And so I was pressuring him. And he's like, Kalli, I'm so young, like obviously he's 4 years younger than me. He's like, I want to live my life. I'm like, I don't have a lot of time, like my, whatever you call it, your biological, clock is ticking. And I just, and with he knew, I've told him about my experiences and my hard times with getting pregnant, staying pregnant. And so for him, it was just like, I get what you're saying, but I'm not ready. And I just, everyone was asking, my mom was telling me, Kalli, with your experiences, with our family history, blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, it's not even fun. I don't even want him now. And like, I started thinking about it and praying about it. And I remember one night I was just asking God, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, is this what I should be doing? Is this my life? Like, am I supposed to have kids? And I was just talking to God about it. And I felt so strongly that he said, maybe I have another plan for you. You ever thought about that? Maybe it's, it's okay not to have kids. You're not a freak if you decide not to have kids. You're not abnormal. There's a lot of people that can't have kids, and there's a lot of people that can and they don't want to. It's okay if you don't want to try. Like, the only pressure you're putting on you is the pressure you're putting on yourself, So I thought about it, and I was like, Brian's never going to be up for that. Like, he's going to want kids. I mean, that's all we ever did was talk about having kids before we got married and stuff, and how many, and 4, and,
right.
And so I had that conversation with him. I just was like, what do you think about this? Like, what have you ever thought about not having kids? And he was like, is that an option? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I've never thought, like you said, I'm Polynesian, that's family's everything. And he's just like, I never even thought that would be an option for me. And I was like, well, we don't have to decide. He's like, I like that. I like that idea. I'm like, really? You do? And he's just like, let's do it. That's our life. We won't have kids. I'm like, well, wait, what if we change our mind? But we're like, there's always adoption or fostering. There's so many kids out there. There's so many kids out there that why go through, and I'm not knocking this for anybody who really wants to have their own child, but why go through all the in vitro and all these other things and surrogacy and all this stuff when there's kids over there, like, that need you. So I'm just like, if it ever comes to the point where we want to have kids, they're there. we don't have to have them. They don't have to be our own flesh and blood. You know, we'll love them and raise them as our own. If it happens, it hasn't happened yet. We haven't felt ready yet. We're still living our lives. We like to travel. We like to have fun. We're outdoorsy. But eventually it might, you know, and we had to be okay with our story and our choice and our way. And we've told our families, and, you know, people ask us all the time, and it's kind of hard because it's like, we can't really have kids because he's, you know, been chopped and I've been scraped, and like, there's just been all kinds of things that have happened where we can't have them. But we got to decide before he had cancer and everything, we got to decide we don't want kids. And then later on, he got his testicular cancer, because if it would have happened before, we would have been like, oh, there goes our chance. And then it would have hurt us. You know, we got to choose. And so I'm not saying I can't have kids. I'm sure I could get pregnant. Like, I just don't want to. I don't want to go through those traumatic experiences again. And, you know, it's our choice, and our families have accepted that, and that's fine.
Yeah. No, I like where you're okay with the other options that are out there. I was kind of on the same boat. I told my wife, our plan was, like, we kind of got married at 20, I don't know, 22, 23. Well, 23, it's 10 years this month.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, at the end of this month. And so I kind of told her, like, well, we need to get our feet under us first before we ever have kids. Mm-hmm. And she was going through school. She was just accepted in the nursing program when we were engaged. Mm-hmm. And so I told her, like, well, hey, we'll get done with school. School ain't for me. Like, I couldn't wait to get out of high school. So I wasn't about college.
Like, what are you doing after school? I am not going back. Yeah. That's for sure. Not for a long time.
I was like, if I thought that dropping out or a GED was an option, I would have done it. But like, it just wasn't talked about back then. Right. Yeah. But like, I have a kid that works for me now, where I'm always like, you going to drop out of school yet? And just like, dude, high school diploma's never gotten me anywhere, you know, kind of just joking with him. But anyway, so I kind of told her, let's get our feet under us. Let's get you through school. I'm trying to build a business. Like, let me try to get some traction on that before we have sleepless nights. Right. Mm-hmm. And then a few years down the road, I was like, dude, this is kind of nice. Like, we're making decent money. We're not tied down to anything. The hardest thing we have is a dog, you know, like, same. Yeah. I'm like, why complicate this with kids? Right. And so I kind of talked about that with her, and she denies it. She's like, you never brought that up. And I'm like, I'm on record. I'm on the podcast and on record talking about this. And anyway, so she kind of told me, hey, I think it's kind of time. So she has her master's degree in nursing now. And I'm on to my third business. And so I'm just like, she's like, hey, I think it's time. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. What about this busy not kids thing? You know, I kind of like I would tell her, and if William ever listens to this when he's older, this is nothing against you personally, bro. It's just the thought, right?
Right. And he'll have his own.
So yeah.
I'm sure he'll have a moment that he's like, I don't want kids either.
I was like, we're extremely happy, and we're financially fine, and we're all these things. Like, why? And my mom will scold me for saying this, but I'm like, why mess that up and go have kids, you know? Yeah. And then we went like a year, like, not preventing, I guess would be the way to put it. Uh-huh. And then Amanda's like, it's not happening. I don't know why. And then I went and got tested. Everything was fine. And then she got an appointment set up with like a specialist. Uh-huh. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, if it happens, it happens. Yeah, I don't know that I want to get anything crazy. Mm-hmm. And I believe her appointment was on like a Wednesday. And the Tuesday before, she found out, she took a test and found out she was pregnant. Awesome. So we never ended up going, but that route. Mm-hmm. And then, he's 2 now. He just turned 2, and I think like, okay. Like, I like him now. I didn't like him at 5:45 this morning when he was crying. There goes my life. There goes my youth. You know, I don't knock it at all. I honestly always thought I'd have kids, and I love kids. I worked with kids for 10 years in the dental field. Like, that's like, I love kids. I love my nieces and nephews. I want them all the time, but it just wasn't for me. And that's okay. You're not, you know, and it's okay if you have mixed feelings about it too. You know, like, obviously you love your child now that you have your son. It's different, and you would never take that back. I'm sure, there's days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so freaking hard. I mean, it's the same thing with a spouse. Like, let's be honest. You're like, why did I sign up for this? But, you know,
It's the
We'll
good
cut
and the
that,
bad.
Brian. We'll cut it.
Yeah. You got to take the good and the bad with it, and having kids and having your legacy and something to pass on. And, it's beautiful to have kids, especially if you can. And, I'm not at all knocking it. It just didn't work that way for us. And, yes, there are financial things. And people always tell us, well, it's not all about money, like who's going to take care of you when you're older? And I'm like, there's no guarantee these kids are going to give a shit about you when you're old. They're going to throw you in a home. Like, I know plenty of people that, but
I was like, who says I'm getting old?
Right? I'm outliving my kids. Like, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, to each their own, and some people say they'll never have kids and they have them and they love it. And some people say they want a bunch of kids and they never have any and they love their life, like that was me. I always thought I was the first one. You can line all my friends up in high school. I was like, I'm going to be the first one to have a kid. I want kids. Like, I was so hungry to have a kid. Like, it was dangerous. Like, I always wanted a big family, and then it just didn't happen, and I've accepted it, and it's fine. And so, and maybe you're somebody that, like you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to mess up this thing.
Yeah.
But now it's like you can't imagine life without him.
Yeah, but I'm not sure there's going to be more.
Oh, really? You guys are done?
I don't know.
Just get more
I
fur
don't
babies.
think she is.
Yeah, get more fur babies.
Yeah,
and if you ever decide, hey, I do, you can always adopt.
Yeah, well, she asked me, she was like, so he's gonna be 2, like it took us a year last time. And I was like, no, dude, like I'm not even having this conversation with you. I'm fine with 1. I don't know if I want to do 2.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Just get some more fur babies. Those are the best. I
got
dogs.
informed the other day that we were getting a cat. So we have a kitten now.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, no, it's no, I don't like cats. I've always wanted a dog. I was fine always having a dog for the rest of my life. And my dog now is like 12 or 13. She's old, arthritis, all that, right? And I've just been like, I love her, but I'm like, okay, like she doesn't have much longer.
Yeah, and you dread those days. So.
But I'm kind of okay not getting another dog. Like that's where my thought process has been. And so I got Amanda a dog couple Christmas 2 years ago. Got her a puppy. Oh. She ended up having like liver issues. I think it was liver issues, and be on medication the rest of her life. And so we reached out to the breeder, like, hey, have you ever seen this before? Like, is there anything we can do? And he said, well, let me take her back and let my vet look at her. And so we sent her back to the breeder. Breeder's vet looked at her. Yeah, this is the problem. Yeah, this is going to be the rest of her life. And we had just gone through that with a different dog where it was pills every day and he'd have seizures. And so pills every day. And we did it for 2 years. And then he ended up, the pills were wrecking his liver. And so we had to
try to fix one problem and it just creates another problem.
We couldn't just give him more medication, but he started to where he would have seizures like every day, even on the medication. And so
hard to watch him go through that.
Yeah, we ended up putting him down. And so that's why I was like, okay, it's time for another dog. And then that dog now, like a year and a half down the road's looking like the same thing.
So you're like, I'm done with dogs. I'm done with this. So what breeds are you getting?
Well, this one was a Vizsla, and
I don't know what that is.
It's like like they call them red, but they're brown, right? It's like a brown, like greyhound, or it's a Hungarian bird dog is what the lineage is. But the one before was a Labradoodle, and I like my dog. She's a mutt black lab, but that Labradoodle, best dog I've ever had in my life.
Get another Labradoodle.
I know. I think I'm done with dogs, right?
Yeah.
So I told my wife. So the breeder ended up keeping that dog.
Oh, okay.
And then we still have the old one, just like waiting to kick the bucket. It lasts like 3 years, and she's just going strong.
There is some freedom because, like, our dog is our baby. That's our child. And so whenever we go somewhere, we have to plan her, or if we can't take her, we have to plan how many hours. And so I totally get it. It's like having a babysitter or something for your dog. It's a whole responsibility in itself. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, sometimes I'm like, I wish, like, I had the freedom of not having the strings, just because my dog is like my child.
Sure.
That is my child. That's my only child I'm ever going to have is an animal, pretty much. But yeah, I totally understand what you mean. Like, you like the freedom, and me and my husband love that. We love being able to just pick up and go, and that's been our life. We love traveling. We love getting in the car. We love going camping and stuff. And majority of that, our dog can go with us, but it's...
Where's your favorite place to vacation?
Hawaii.
Hawaii?
Yeah.
How many times have you been?
Just a couple of times, but it's just the best place in the world to me. And I'd love to go other places. I've only been in the United States. I haven't been out of the country, but I've been all over the United States, and Hawaii's the best. I feel like it's got to be a different country. Like it basically is, but just the spirit of aloha is real. Like I don't know if you've been, but it is real there, and I love it once. There. Yeah, especially if you get off of the main touristy islands. Like if you leave, like we've only gone to Oahu. My husband has a lot of family there, so we're off the main like Waikiki, Honolulu, and you're able to go back into people's home life, and it's just such a beautiful place for one, and then just the people there, the spirit there, just everyone just is like in a chill zen. Like, I mean, I swear it's like everyone's high or something. They're just like, where you gotta go? Like, it's such a beautiful day. There's so much to be grateful for, and I love that place. We've been trying to eventually move there, but it is so expensive. Yeah. And once you're there, it's like, you can't leave because it's so expensive. You're never going to be able to come and visit, so it's one of those like, well, maybe this will be retirement for us, but we would love to live there. If we had $1 million, we'd be there.
That's where you'd go.
Yeah, Hawaii.
So you'd want to live there, not even just vacation.
Oh no, live.
That's cool.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to run through? I mean, we're over an hour. See, I told you. Everyone's like, what am I going to talk about?
I have so much more I could talk about. Not really. I mean, if there's anything that you feel like I haven't touched on, or that, you feel like I need to clear up. Other than that,
No, I mean, I think you're there. I wrote a quote down that you did post on social media though, and I kind of want to run through it because it kind of hit me too. The last couple months I've been just like overburdened with everything. Kid, house. Like we built a house 2 years ago. We're finishing the basement right now. And my wife's like, you don't have to do all these things, but for some reason, I just don't know how. Right. I had a conversation with one of my adult friends, like you had talked about, right? My parent friends. And I just said, she started asking me, well, how's this going? How's this going? How's this going? And she's like, man, you're doing a lot. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I don't know how to do it any other way. Like this is how I've always done it. And so recently I've been struggling with everything. And I saw this quote maybe a week or two ago when I was kind of prepping this, and I read through your post again, right, to kind of just familiarize myself with it. And I mean, you obviously know what it says, but it says, I survived because the fire inside of me burned brighter than the fire around me. And I forgot about that one. It just kind of hit me, and I was like, that's where I'm at. Like I'm trying to do, we just bought a property in California that we're trying to use as a short-term rental. Again, I run a retail store that I'm there every day, all day. And along with 3 other businesses going simultaneously, and a 2-year-old and a wife that works full time. And I'm just like,
and a house and
a
dog.
And I just mention all of that because of just everything that's stacked on shoulders. Right. And when I read that quote, that's what I thought of. I thought, well, that's what it is. Like, again, it's my pushing my brick wall. Right. But it's because everything that's going on around me is not as important as what I can see myself pushing towards. Right. And the things that I have in my head that I want to be at.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And so I think that's a good spot to leave it, to be honest. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah. It's cool to get to know you a little better. Like I said, I'm not sure that we even hung out in high school or anything, maybe a class or two, but I'm glad that I saw your post. I'm glad you came on, shared some stories.
Friends, even if it's on Facebook. Now it can be outside of Facebook.
Yeah, now we're friends.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. Anything else you want to say?
I just want to thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me share my story, and I hope this helps people. Thank you for letting this platform be something that I could share with you.
Yeah.
Sharing your platform with me.
If people want to get in contact with you for any questions or anything, someone, like you said, people reach out to you. Are you okay with, maybe we'll just tag you in all your posts and everything too?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine.
Facebook, Instagram, what do you got?
I have Facebook. Facebook is not my go-to. I'm more on Instagram. I got to be honest, I'm not super into social media as much. I do get on there. I do view things, but I mean, I don't live on there. I try not to anyway.
Sure.
But you can find me on Instagram, Kalli.Solace, and Solace is my rap name.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
That's okay. Let's cut. It's just for fun.
Okay, guys, that's episode 74. Kalli, see, I almost did it. I almost said Kalli Stevens. Kalli Stewart. Stevens is her maiden name, so that's how I knew her in high school. But episode 74, there's going to be people out there that are going to listen to this, and they're going to either be in this situation at present time, future time, or they're going to tie strings to it that they've already been through this. So, or maybe you know someone that is going through something that Kalli's gone through and been able to grow through. So, if there is someone out there that you know that can benefit from hearing this, then, share it over to them. I'm not going to beg for your likes and shares and posts this time because I think you guys will already do that. So anyway, that's episode 74. We will see you guys next Saturday.